I'm from Philadelphia, though I fled as soon as I could, and ironically have ended up here again late in life. But when I was a young fellow, I couldn't wait to leave. But before I left Philadelphia, I was the director and the actor in an opera company called the Demitas Opera Company, and we were really quite successful. It was 3 young singers from Curtis and me, and I directed and did mime parts or whatever parts required. We did small operas. We kind of adapted them for ourselves. So, and I've directed operas in a lot of different places under a lot of different circumstances. But back in when I was back here in Philadelphia, I was working at the Prince Music Theater. And met Andrew Kurtz, who is the founder and artistic director of Center City Opera Theater, and we began working on what he calls the Encounters, which was a very, very short rehearsal period of mostly standard work. We did Eugene Onegin. We actually did an Aida in this postage stamp stage at the Ethical Society. We did some pretty crazy things. But we also began to talk about different directions for the company, one of which would be to do more new work and recently composed work. And in fact, in the past 6 months, we've done, I think, some very good workshop-type work with new material. And we have done one world premiere, which was an opera called Paul's Case, which I directed by Gregory Spears. The shop seems to have various themes in it. One large theme is the issue of a consumerist society where people are consumed. They not only are consumers, but they're consumed by consuming. So part of the story of the shops is all these obsessed buyers of things, except the hero of the shop doesn't buy so much as steals. He steals very valuable stamps obsessively and uses his girlfriend as a decoy so that he can steal stamps from a stamp museum. But it's revealed gradually in the shops that everybody has an obsession with collecting, with shopping, with owning things, probably to compensate for what they lack in their lives. So as it turns out, as you might guess, our hero has a troubled relationship with his mother, who's also an obsessive collector, and was deserted by his father, who was also an obsessive collector, who went off to another woman, and so on. So it's both a comic comment on consumerism, but also a slightly serious investigation as to why people are so driven to consume and to buy and to collect. This is the first time I'll be staging an opera in a completely non-theatrical environment. I've done operas and plays in unusual environments, but usually there's some kind of setup which allows you to replicate what you get in the theater. If you do something in a church, or you have just a big empty space and you can sort of rig a stage, that's fine, and I've done that. This is actually the Comcast market, the market at Comcast, and on the way to Suburban Station. So it really is a non-theatrical, a totally non-theatrical space. And in this space, which we're not going to be able to change pretty much at all, we have to incorporate the orchestra used by Mr. Rushton. We have to incorporate that with singers playing characters, and also a cinematic type of storytelling where one location changes into another really rapidly, sometimes with just a measure between scenes. And of course we really don't have a way to actually have a set. We don't have a way to change scenes. We don't have a lighting setup. We don't have an orchestra pit. So it's going to be very interesting to see just what we can achieve in this environment. It's an unusual environment. We are surrounded by shops, it's true. So though they will be closed when we're performing, all of their marquees and windows will be lit. So it is kind of interesting given what the opera is about. One thing that I think, and I think Maestro Kurtz agrees with me, is that the old operas, as wonderful as they are, and of course it's marvelous to see them at the Met, for example, with famous singers, but when you talk about smaller companies, I think it's better to do and more interesting to do, and I think potentially for an audience more fun to witness, something that really is of our time, that is literally about things that concern us today, whether those are sexual issues, whether they are behavioral or social issues, that those are the things librettists are dealing with, and those are the things composers are trying to find music for. What's happened now is with younger composers, and by that I mean composers sort of under 50, in their 40s, you have more and more composers who will use a whole range of devices, from 12-note technique, if it's going to work for them, to various kinds of pop and rap. And frankly, I think that's the future. And if you go back to the very beginning of opera, public opera, the Monteverdi the operas in Venice, l'Incoronazione di Poppea, for example, in 1640, that's what he was doing. He used all kinds of things. Now, he was an 80-year-old man. He was one of the greatest composers of Western history, a tremendous master of the esoteric styles of that time. But he used the street songs and little catchphrases and tunes and dances. And a kind of rap of that period. It came to be called recitative, but then they actually did it as though they were speaking in rhythm. So there's nothing new about this eclectic way of writing operas. It's a rediscovery, and I think it's been happening in the past, slowly, it's been happening in the past 20 to 25 years. And again, without saying that everything is great or everything is deathless, I think it's a way to go. It's quite viable. So I hope that this is the future of opera.